people who read the Earth Chronicles would like to read, perhaps, would be the end of days. And so, yes, he jumbles together a bunch of Sumerian and Akkadian and Assyrian and Biblical and Greek and Mesopotamian. So, if the dates disagree, why do the dates disagree? Well, they could have talked to different entities. The entities could have been tricksters and gave them different information. Or they could have just been making it up because deep in their mind they hate humanity and want it to end, right? But, you know, there's other things aside. But Zecharia Sitchin kind of undoes himself a bit. Yes, Enlil, the northern third, the middle third, Anu, Enki, the bottom third, was, you know, how they saw the skies. And yes, they really did see planets and stuff like this. And yes, I agree. Marduk, well, not Marduk, Nibiru is a term that can refer to a planet. But is it like Kahu or Rahu? It's not a real planet, but just a way that they describe an eclipse or something happening. Or is it a spiritual thing and they're mixing the planes, as they say? But a spiritual being, yes, or class of beings or whatever. Thinking about the 666, is it 600 times 6 times 60? Could that be it? 600 Anunnaki at once? 60, the number of Anu? 6, the number of, as I said yesterday, Ashkur? Could that be the whole thing? Could it be that Baalbek was visited by Nero? Could it be what it times together? Could the, you know, Isaac Newton put together theories and figures that the end of days would be 2060. But if you look at what Zecharia Sitchin says about if Nibiru, as far as a planet where the Anunnaki come from, comes around every so often, why did this happen here and this happen there? So he tries to explain, oh, it's not always 3,600 years. And if it's 3,600 years, wouldn't 5,600 years ago, wouldn't it be, you know, about 3,100 years of the Common Era? Wouldn't that be the time? No. He switches from that. He switches, but first he has to explain why it isn't 160. That's not the date of the last, and then it comes from there. But it does make sense that Christianity was influenced by some things. Like, it's like, okay, if Nebu, what was his name? If Belshazzar was really Daniel, and Nebuchadnezzar was cast out of Babylon when Kurash, you know, Cyrus the Great, came through. But I'm going to point out something right here, that if somebody says something like this, you ask them two questions, you know, you assume the best of them. You assume they're not a liar. You assume they're schizophrenic if they tell you garbage like this. But, you know, they're like, you see that? You see that? You know what they're representing there? And how some of them have moons? Is that they're representing a multi-rocket spaceship. A multi-rocket spaceship. Hubal or some moon god is never equated to Allah, even without name in the Islamic tradition. God is a god of all, and all that other stuff, and saying that, oh, if Nebuchadnezzar had visited Medina, had visited Yathrib back in the day, that the Jews that remained there ended up being the reason why you have Islam. It's like, they don't worship a moon god. Symbols mean all sorts of things, and Islam itself, early on, the people that, if there was a war, suns and moons and stars and stuff would be on the flags of the people who fought al-Muslimin. So, again, a bunch of ignorance making up stuff. But you really want to see an ancient alien theorist that makes up stuff? Silky, that Greek guy, maybe he's just nuts. But Eric von Daniken, when I go over some of his books, I don't have as many, but I've read ones that I don't have. He really ends up making up stuff, and Zecharia Sitchin, I forget how many different things he tries to turn into rocket ships and all this other stuff, when it makes sense how it is, and some stuff's just mystical. But there's some curious stuff that one can twist. If one believes in the ancient alien theory, that it has to be ancient aliens and all this other stuff, and not metaphysical beings that don't have physical bodies like us, they're of a different matter, but a lot of the stories are very interesting, but the stories of these other cultures are even less scientifically accurate and less historical than what you see of the Bible. But this is the whole thing. The ancient alien theorist, when you see what the ancient alien theorist has to say, what is, what are they looking at? Okay, we want to have beliefs. We want to think, maybe the God, maybe we were created by God, and there was rival things wanting to be worshipped by us, or maybe gods or whatever, but they left us. They left us before Alexander the Great. They had no influence. By 584 BCE, Marduk was dead, and Nabu, his son, was nowhere to be seen. So, you can believe in all this stuff, but you don't have to do anything. It's about predicting the future. It's about these people who don't realize that the book of Daniel and the book of Revelations and stuff was really talking about its times, and had been distorted through history anyways. Even the book of Revelation changed from number 616 to 666, and I have more videos on this, by the way. Stuff was implied by artists, and that's really stretching it. When you have to go into what very well could be fiction, or representational rather than literal, and saying, looking for secret messages. Yes, I showed you that painting when I went over the purpose of art in one of the 666 videos. Well, one of the videos to the number. That, he's implying that the reason for the tilt in the Last Supper painting was because of the Elijah. Elijah's supposed to take the cup. So he's symbolizing that in the cup, which that actually makes sense. That kind of unveils something that a lot of you would not unveil. And a lot of culture, trying to find meaning of, coincidence. Something stored in Jerusalem that has to do with end times. Is that a coincidence? Yeah, it really is a coincidence. Not so much of a coincidence when you realize that things are bought in. And the ancient alien theorists also try to insert implied Jewish or Christian supremacy, and try to, just like the Kabbalist, when something's not true, it's not because it was changed or lost, or it was just made up in the first place, that it was, it's secretly true some otherwise, that differences in language could be that not a letter was lost when Isaiah used the word for oracle instead of letter, because you remove the yod from that letter or that word, but it's because, you know, he's trying to point that the whole thing's in secret code. And I believe in deeper or alternative meanings, but when you look at a religious scripture, unless you're just trying to, you know, be armchair about it, you know, hypocritical or something, you want to look at it in a way that on the surface, it's of value, it's of truth, it's something you can do something with, not, this is just a bunch of weird stuff, but, you know, it's going to be important at some point. I don't think it works that way. The changes of the ages, the 2160 years, the long count, the 12 million something things, the fact that the Marduk in the mythology represents a being that comes in, and the other ones, El and Sin and the other, you know, he wanted to be the chief god, he wanted to be Godhead, and the other Anunnaki, no, we don't want this god to be this, and the timing of Abraham leaving Haran and you know, traveling from here to here and arriving here, Marduk, the dates and the other stories, that those correlations make sense. I am absolutely not saying that you can't look at this, what he has to say, and say, maybe I'm going to make a different conclusion. And I want you to do that with me, too. You know, look at what I have to say, instead of, and say, yes, we have different, that's interesting information, but I prefer to use it this way, I prefer to use it that way. It's like, some people can be right, making different conclusions. And if I'm wrong about something, I am perfectly willing for people to point out some of that stuff. Marduk having 50 names. I have recently did a little ritual, and this ritual damning the Anunnaki, right? The 50 names of Marduk, well, I don't think that this is the actual Sumerian names, because it's mixed up Akkadian, and there's reason to believe that the Necronomicon is not, you know, an authentic text. It's a magical fiction for, they'd be able to reproduce more of the original text and how it sounded if that was true. The actual translators don't, Akkadian, Sumerian, they're different scripts. You don't mix them up that way. Now, you can get confused translating one word for another, but Akkadian, Sumerian, Assyrian, they're different languages, man. So whoever came up with the Simon Necronomicon, it's a magical fiction. It represents some stuff. And the 50 names of Marduk was because he was given the titles to replace other deities, and the Yahweh thing, ridiculing those ones. Hey, your gods aren't even there anymore. You know, again, this theory. But I believe they have respite. And the 7th of the 6th month, in the middle of the night, of 1439, which year it is right now, I had a dream that relates to some of this. And this was in the middle of the night, covers over my head, eyes shut, but it was like there was something in the east, like a planet. But it was like a being, too. And like a planet, I mean, you know, vast, very vast. And this was around midnight, exactly. I don't know, because I was asleep afterwards. Maybe this was hypnagogic. But sometimes I have these states where I see through my eyes shut. In the darkened room, like, maybe I see detail more than as if I had lights everywhere. It's an interesting experience. And I also, on the 12th, had an experience. And I guess I could relate it to the whole Marduk and the Martian, you know, the war, the Anunnaki war, whatever. But it was like there was a 3-clawed hand, again, in the east, but this was red. And there was something on the 19th about orange spikes or something like that. 19 of them in a hole. But you know, I am not saying some of this stuff goes beyond mere projections of some of this. I am rambling. I said stuff in the meme that I did not say in the speech, but you know, there. Just look at what different cultures have to say about the end times. If the person watching has any questions, now is your time before I click that little button. But tomorrow I'll have the show on Agaras, mythology regarding that. And there was another name for Baal that came up in this book that I don't remember, but it's the Hittite. Was it the Hittite name? The Hittite name. Yeah, that could have been it. But the origins of Christian mythology do go into the whole Anunnaki myths, the actual myths, and the ancient aliens. Yeah, they can reinterpret and find some of that information that some of us haven't found because some of these people have access to things.